What's more scientific, a belief in God or atheism? To answer this question, we're going to look at three scientific laws, those being the first law of thermodynamics, the second law of thermodynamics, and the law of cause and effect.
Cue the collective groan emanating from the scientific community. Sorry, Jarrett, but having studied apologetics heavily for the past 7 years and having seen countless attempts to forward God on the basis of these principles, I can't help but cringe at the idea of another round of incredulous word salad. This is a feeling not helped by the Kent Hovind seal of approval on one of your other videos I'll be looking at in a second. But please, do tell us what you believe these principles are and what they demonstrate.
The second law of thermodynamics, also known as the law of entropy, states that as time passes on, the quality of energy always decreases. This law explains why heat always transfers from a hot body to a cold body, and this proves without a doubt that the universe had a beginning. Because if the universe was infinitely old and had no beginning, then everything would be the same temperature. And because things are different temperatures in the universe today, we know for a fact that the universe had a beginning.
How does it demonstrate that? All this actually shows us is that the universe shifted into its current state. The sands of an hourglass eventually fall through to the bottom chamber, yet that does not mean the hourglass only existed as far back as the last time it was turned over. I realise I just described the big crunch there. Now how said shift in universal state occurred? Whether it formed entirely on its own or via the ripples in a multiverse, or perhaps shifting from a timeless quantum state to current universal state, is not known. We know the event that followed on from this, the Big Bang, but so far our attempts to study beyond that point have proven fruitless. Which is an okay admission. In science, we should never be afraid to admit that we don't have the answers so long as we're willing to try and work towards them. Science is looking at multiple explanations, of which God is not one of them. There is no theistic hypothesis in science, since theism has categorically failed to offer a basis upon which to test their unfounded assertions. If you believe you have solved this problem, then please, don't stop at a YouTube video. Get that shit peer-reviewed and sent off, and collect your Nobel Prize.
The law of cause and effect states that for everything that began to exist, there needs to be an adequate cause to explain its existence. For example, every book was caused to exist by an author. Every car was caused to exist by a car manufacturer, and so on. Now, because the universe began to exist, we know for a fact that the universe needs a cause to explain its existence.
By what basis? Cause and effect describes the interactions of already existing energy and matter. No matter is created or destroyed in these processes. So to take observations which do not involve the formation of either matter and energy and declare that to be the dictating law of said formation is an overreach. It does not follow on from the available information. This is what happens when you equivocate the term form or the phrase begins to exist as you put it. A book is just a collection of matter and stored energy. We abstract the book into existence. I'm not making matter, I'm not making energy when I make a book. I'm simply moving these things about which has no real relevance to the formation of those things. Also, don't think that I didn't spot your deliberate use of artificial examples of formation. Why not discuss sand dunes or pebbles on a beach? Well, because that wouldn't be effective in setting up the analogies to be biased towards the conclusion you desire. You have to select stuff we know the artificial origins for, since if you instead use the results of explained natural phenomenon, you couldn't rely on your audience doing the legwork for you.
The first law of thermodynamics states that no natural process can create or destroy matter or energy.
Well, it would seem that someone's got into the pork pies again. The first law does not state what you claim it states. Instead, it just states that energy cannot be created or destroyed. Period. You've just gone ahead and added the qualifier natural, which I think you'll find does not exist in any scientific literature, at least as far as I am aware of. Therefore, if you want to throw this out as being applicable to the formation of the universe, then I'm sorry. Out goes every formation event, including creation, since your God couldn't have created said energy either. See, you don't get to pick and choose which events are excluded and which aren't simply because you go around editing what science says. And yes, I know that you'll make all the typical excuses of God being separate to the natural order, but here's the thing. Any argument which you can make to exclude God from this rule, I can also apply to the state from which our universe emerged, and all you can do at that point is appeal to a special pleading fallacy. Again, the Big Bang and the state of entropy does not mean that the universe couldn't have existed in some timeless quantum state, and whether laws that apply internally to our universe apply to the plane of existence outside of said universe, and whether that plane of existence could be classed as a closed system, are all matters we can discuss. But so far all you have done is show yourself to be completely unprepared to talk about any of the topics discussed so far.
This proves that the universe could not have created itself because nature cannot create or destroy matter or energy.
Then neither can your God, since once we acknowledge your edit of what said law actually says, we find you and your God stuck in the exact same boat as the universe. Maybe, just maybe, don't cut yourself off at your own feet next time.
This proves that whatever caused the universe to exist has to be supernatural or above nature. It's important to note that the law of cause and effect only applies to things that began to exist. Now, because God is defined as a being who created our universe, God is not bound by the dimensions of our universe. Because God is not bound by time, he had no beginning, and therefore he needs no cause to explain his existence. As we have just seen, however, the universe did have a beginning, therefore the law of cause and effect applies to the universe, and we need an adequate cause to explain its existence. Because nature cannot create itself, God is the only logical explanation for the existence of our universe.
Great. Now if only you could actually demonstrate any of what you just asserted. The universe could have existed eternally in a timeless state at the center of singularity, which would explain why we haven't reached heat death, since that would only start to occur as time progressed. So you're still stuck with having to tackle a self-forming universe, as currently you fail to do that.
There is a law of logic known as the law of the excluded middle. This law states that if there are two and only two possibilities, and you can undoubtedly disprove one of the possibilities, then by default, the other possibility must be true. In the case with God's existence, there are only two possibilities. Either God exists or he does not exist. Because we have just scientifically disproven atheism, we can now logically conclude that God exists. So, if you believe in God and an atheist mocks your beliefs, just remember, they must ignore 3 scientific laws.
No, they just have to know the science to a higher level than you do, which, as evidenced in your video, isn't exactly hard. Yet even worse is the fact that you've been caught out actively lying, changing one of the laws you use because it kills your argument flat out. You haven't proven anything. Also, you're discussing a false dichotomy of universal formation. The universe could have been formed by some force other than a deity, or a deity could exist yet not form the universe. But currently, all we have evidence for are naturalistic explanations which are being studied further since they have actual scientific merit, unlike the crap you are spewing.
And if you're an atheist, I highly encourage you to examine your own worldview. That's what I did, and it led me to a strong belief in God. If you'd like to discover more scientific evidence which disproves any possibility of atheism, you can check out my book on Amazon.com titled The Millennial Apology, Volume 2, Atheism Dismantled. My name is Nathan Jarrett, and I thank you guys so much for watching.
Yeah, I was also shocked to find out he was trying to sell this crap as well. Then again, I guess I shouldn't really be that shocked since that's the entire basis of religion. But I thought since we're here and it's been such a short video, why don't we head over to see what the Millennial Apologist had to say on the video Kent Hovind posted to.
Hi, my name is Nathan Jarrett, and if you give me 5.5 minutes of your time, I will scientifically prove to you that God exists.
Well, I'm going to hold you to that in how I expect this video to be based in actual science, unlike the previous one. Or hell, if you start quoting scripture, then I'm really going to take issue. But don't let that faze you. By all means, carry on.
God is defined as a being who created our universe.
By who? This certainly isn't the definition used by most people throughout history, including most Christians. I will say that many religions include the creation of our universe in their definition, but that does not equal God being defined as the creator. This may be a little nitpicky, but I've got to stick up for the pantheons you are ignoring.
Now, because God created our universe, He is not bound by physical laws. That means God is outside of space, and He's also outside of time. Because God is outside of time, He had no beginning, and He will also have no ending. This is why the question, what created God, is illogical, because nothing created God. He's always been, and He always will be.
Great. Now if only you could demonstrate that. Otherwise, this is just currently your assertion. An assertion I can match with the universe itself as having existed in some timeless quantum form at the centre of singularity, and there'd be nothing you could say to raise your assertions above mine, since we'd both assume the same thing. We only differ on said entity. Fact is, you have to assume far more in asserting that a God exists, that God could create the universe, that God wanted to create the universe, and that God did create the universe, which weakens your original assumptions compared to a self-sustained universe. Occam's razor is a pain in the neck for people like you.
Furthermore, because God exists outside of time, He alone has the ability to accurately and consistently predict the future. One piece of literature I want to focus on is known as the Book of Daniel. The Book of Daniel can be found in the Old Testament of the Christian Bible.
Hang on a second. This isn't science, this is retrofitting vague prophetic statements which the people who claim to be fulfilling them, and later those who wrote their story, would have known of and therefore been fully capable of editing said stories to better conform to said prophecies. It's called a self-fulfilling prophecy, and contrary to the name, is no actual sign of prophetic ability, but merely a sign that vague statements don't mean all too much.
And for those who don't know, the Old Testament of the Christian Bible is a collection of 39 different books which were written by over 25 different authors over the time span of approximately 1,000 years. It is important to note that all 39 books of the Old Testament were written centuries before Jesus Christ was born.
And it's important to note that these were available to the authors of the New Testament, meaning that said New Testament could be edited to match what was said, and later that parts of the Old Testament could be rewritten to much the same effect. To pretend like when the books of the Old Testament were written matters completely misses the fact that it doesn't, since the New Testament itself has never been verified beyond being further fiction written by people with knowledge of the Old Testament. Currently, this is no different to someone noting how the prophecy made in one fantasy novel came true in the sequel. That's not spectacular, that's not amazing, that's not evidence of prophetic ability.
In the year 538 BC, Daniel predicted that one day God would send a special servant to earth to bless all of humanity. However, Daniel also predicted that right after the servant would arrive, he would be rejected and killed, but not for himself. Daniel's prediction can be found in the 9th chapter of his book, in verses 25 to 26, which read, "Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. And after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself." The word Messiah here refers to the special messenger of God that will one day bless all of humanity. Now, when Daniel wrote this prediction down, Jerusalem was currently in ruins. So here, he's predicting that the time between the commandment to rebuild Jerusalem and the arrival of the Messiah will be 69 weeks. We get 69 weeks by adding 7 weeks to 62 weeks. 62 is just another way of saying 62, so 7 plus 62 equals 69. Daniel also predicted that right after the Messiah will arrive, he will be cut off, but not for himself. The eyewitness account of an Israelite named Nehemiah tells us that the rebuilding of Jerusalem took place in the 20th year of King Artaxerxes of Persia. If we study historical records, then we see that the 20th year of King Artaxerxes was in 444 BC. So now we have our starting point of Daniel's prediction of 444 BC.
Except for the fact that King Artaxerxes came into power in the year 465 before Common Era, making this the start of their first year, which bled over into 464 before Common Era. But even accounting for said fact, the start of King Artaxerxes' 20th year began in the year 446 before Common Era and ended in 445 before Common Era. So when you say the starting point is 444 before Common Era, you've removed an entire year from King Artaxerxes' reign. You've fudged the numbers.
While we only use weeks of days, the Israelites had weeks of days and weeks of years. Now the weeks Daniel is talking about are weeks of years. So Daniel claimed that 69 weeks of years after Jerusalem was rebuilt, the Messiah will arrive and then be cut off. Our next question is, what is a biblical year? Cultures throughout centuries have had different definitions for a year. For example, a version of the Mayan calendar consisted of 365-day years. Our modern year that we use consists of 365.24 days. However, if we study the Bible, specifically in Revelation chapter 12 and Genesis chapter 7 and 8, we see that a biblical year is made up of 360 days. To add 69 weeks of biblical years to our calendar, we simply need to convert 69 weeks of biblical years to our years. And if we do the conversion like I've done here, we find that 69 weeks of biblical years equals 476 years for us. When we add time to our calendar, it is important to note that there is no year zero. So it goes directly from 1 BC to 1 AD. When we add 476 years to 444 BC, we come to the year 33 AD.
Which, as noted, isn't true, since the true starting point was 446 or 445 before Common Era and not 444 before Common Era, you'd actually come to 32 Common Era. I wonder if this is important.
Did anything special happen in 33 AD? This happened in 33 AD.
Incorrect. This is claimed to have happened in 33 Common Era. There is no historical evidence for the crucifixion of Christ, mundane or mythical. The first secular accounts of Christ come in decades later discussing his believers, and that's it. And I know what's going to come next. Why would people believe if it hadn't actually happened at all? Ignoring the fact that this argument can be applied to any religion in existence, I've studied cults that develop over the span of a couple years in the modern age of technology, so this isn't particularly unlikely. But anyway, what's the basis for your claim?
If you simply Google what happened in 33 AD, you will discover that Jesus was crucified in April of 33 AD.
Google? Really? That's your evidence. Reminder, you try to sell this shit at the end of your video, and you'll try to do so again at the end of this one. What the hell is going on?
And for those of us who are more visual learners, I've made this chart here. If you want, you can pause your screen and check it out. Over 500 years before Jesus Christ was born, Daniel predicted the exact year when he would be crucified. The only way such a remarkable prediction could come true is if it was inspired by God. There are over 100 predictions just like this found all throughout the Old Testament which prove that Jesus Christ is the Savior of the world.
Well, if they're like this one in how they're not only vague, but giving you assertions on meaning and everything else, said prophecies miss the year entirely, then what do you really have? When Hiro Nakamura travelled to the future in Season 1 of Heroes, he didn't just get the year of the explosion, but the day. Also, your claim that there would be no other possible explanations lacks merit. As just noted, time travelers, aliens, secret organizations, seers. All these things could exist without God and would be equally, if not superior explanations were prophecy actually shown. But it hasn't been shown. We have a vague passage from one work of fiction being written into another work of fiction, one which, if we take your analysis, the author still managed to mess up. The passages are not clearly referring to Christ, they're not talking about the Son of God or God incarnate, and could refer to any number of other individuals due to their vagueness. This isn't scientific, and it certainly doesn't prove the supernatural, let alone your God. It's just a poorly written book ripping off another equally poorly written book, and that's all. Hi there, I just want to say a few things here at the end of the video before you go. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone who's ever donated to the channel via Patreon, giving a special thanks to the following people: Hannah Banghart, Matthew Kovac, John Schoenrock, Alexander Williams, and Daniel Martinez. Your support has ensured this channel its ability to grow over the years, and for that we are truly thankful. I'd also like to ask that you comment down below and like this video, as well as subscribe and follow Essence of Thought on Facebook and Twitter. Please also consider following Atheist Alliance International on Facebook, an organisation dedicated to helping atheists around the globe. Lastly, I'd like to request that you treat the people responded to in this video with a reasonable degree of respect. Whilst we fully understand that there are justifiable limits to said respect when tackling certain heavy topics, and anger can be a very genuine emotion in tackling injustice, do note any comments utilising language which insults others on the basis of perceived gender, sexuality, ethnicity or ability, both mental and physical, will be removed immediately, and the commenter may be blocked on the moderator's discretion. Let's keep this space one which upholds the humanist values. Thank you for watching.